That day, as everyone departed, I believed I was by myself, savoring secrets in the silent darkness. I hadn't noticed my son observing me until I glanced up. The unsettling expression in his eyes, fixed on my damp hands, halted me abruptly. Yet his reaction was something I never anticipated. What followed left me frozen. The house was as quiet as it usually was in the evenings when James was away. I stood in the kitchen, rinsing the last of the dinner dishes, my hands moving automatically under the warm, soapy water. The only sound of life in the otherwise empty home was the faint clatter of my son Alex's footsteps upstairs. It was always this silent, this lonely. James traveled frequently, moving from city to city for meetings and conferences, leaving me to handle everything alone. This had been our routine for years, but lately the loneliness had become unbearable. I loved my husband. At least I thought I did. But the ache of isolation was a constant companion, an unwelcome presence that whispered to me in the stillness of the night. Was this isolation? No, it was more than that. It was a deep longing for something. Mom? Alex's voice startled me. I turned to see my 18-year-old standing in the doorway, his messy hair falling into his eyes. He was growing so tall, becoming a man right before me. Yes, honey? I asked, drying my hands on a towel. I'm heading to Ryan's to study. I won't be late. All right, drive safely, I replied, watching him grab his bag and disappear out the front door. The slam of the door echoed through the empty house, leaving me alone once again. Always alone, I sighed, my gaze drifting toward the clock. The hours ahead seemed endless. The silence in the house felt suffocating, like a heavy weight pressing on my chest. I poured myself a glass of wine and wandered into the living room, sinking into the soft couch. As the minutes passed, my thoughts grew restless. Memories of nights spent with James, before the job, before the distance, surfaced unbidden. I closed my eyes, trying to hold on to the warmth of those memories, but they faded too quickly, leaving me with the cold reality of my solitude. They were just memories now, distant and unreachable. The wine lowered my inhibitions, and soon my thoughts took a more intimate turn. I tried to resist the urge, telling myself it wasn't appropriate, but the need to feel something, anything, was overwhelming. The living room lights were dim, the curtains drawn. It was safe. No one was there to judge me. I was alone, and it felt like I was disappearing. I needed something to feel real, to feel alive. I let myself give in, but just as I was beginning to lose myself in the moment, the sound of the front door opening shattered the fragile bubble I had created. My eyes flew open in panic, my heart racing. Oh God, no. Not now. Not like this. Mom? Alex's voice called out. I scrambled to compose myself, grabbing the nearest throw blanket to cover myself, but it was too late. Alex stood frozen in the doorway, his face a mix of shock and confusion, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. This couldn't be happening. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with unspoken words. I didn't know you were back, I stammered, my voice shaking. I forgot my charger, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes flickered between me and the blanket I clutched tightly. He saw it. He knew what I was doing, and it was far more humiliating than I could bear. An awkward silence filled the room, the weight of the moment sinking in. I felt heat rising to my cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and shame. I wanted to vanish, to die right there and then. I didn't mean to. Alex began, but his words trailed off. It's okay. I interrupted quickly, my voice trembling. It's not what it looks like. Liar, I thought to myself. This is exactly what it looks like. But we both knew it was precisely what it appeared to be. Alex stood rooted to the spot, his hand gripping the phone charger he'd come back for. The room felt unbearably small, the air heavy with tension. He just stood there, staring, and I wished I could disappear. I clutched the blanket tighter, desperate for the awkward moment to end. You should go finish studying, I said, my voice unsteady but firm. I needed him to leave. Now Alex blinked, snapping out of his stunned trance, and nodded. Yeah, sure. He turned and walked out of the room quickly, his footsteps fading up the stairs. When I heard the faint click of his bedroom door, I exhaled, sinking back into the couch. My heart pounded in my chest, and my thoughts raced with the impossibility of what had just happened. How could I face him again? How could I pretend this hadn't occurred? I pressed my hands to my face, willing the embarrassment to fade. He hadn't really seen anything, had he? No, he must have looked away too quickly. But his expression haunted me, a mix of curiosity, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite place. Something that made me feel exposed, vulnerable, and strangely a little seen. The minutes dragged by painfully slowly. I debated going upstairs to talk to him, to smooth things over. But what could I possibly say? How could I make this less awkward without making it worse? There were no words. Nothing I could say would fix this. Instead, I went to bed early, hoping sleep would bring clarity. But sleep was the last thing I got that night. The next morning, the tension hung over the house like a shadow. I busied myself in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for an omelet I had no appetite to eat. Alex came downstairs, his movements cautious, as if walking on eggshells. He was avoiding me, and I was avoiding him right back, like two strangers sharing a home. Good morning, I ventured, keeping my tone light. Morning, Alex replied, his voice stiff. He grabbed a glass of juice and sat at the table, avoiding my gaze. His face was still flushed, a reminder of the shame I felt. I took a deep breath. About last night. Alex froze, the glass halfway to his lips. Can we not talk about it? He spoke quickly, almost pleading, and I felt a wave of relief. At least a small part of me did. Alex, I need to explain, I began. There's nothing to explain, Mom, he interrupted, finally looking at me. His face was flushed, and his words spilled out in a rush. It's fine. You don't have to feel weird about it or anything. I mean, everyone does stuff like that. I blinked, caught off guard by his bluntness. His words stunned me. He was treating it as if it were normal, like it was just some ordinary, everyday thing. It's just, you're my mom, so it's different. Alex continued, his voice quieter now. But I get it. Dad's gone a lot. You're lonely. I'm not stupid. His words struck me like a sharp blow to the chest. He saw through me. He understood, and that made it even worse. His words hit harder than I expected, the truth of them cutting deep. I looked down at the counter, my hands trembling slightly as I gripped the edge of the sink. He was too smart, too perceptive. He knew exactly what he was doing, and it made me feel exposed, raw. I just don't want things to be weird between us, Alex added. Can we just forget it happened? I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Yes, of course. We'll forget it. Forget it. As if it were possible to forget the way he looked at me, the way I felt when I knew he was watching. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Not even close. He got up and started doing the dishes, his movements stiff and awkward. I remained seated at the table, watching him, but he avoided my gaze. When he finished, he went to the living room. I followed him with my eyes as he sat there, his attention glued to the TV, but I could tell his mind was elsewhere. I was that elsewhere. I had to do something, so I also went to the living room and began folding laundry. But there was a pull in the air, an invisible tension drawing us both toward each other. It was as if I were a magnet, being pulled in every direction. It was subtle, a shift in the atmosphere, and it was driving me crazy. He wasn't exactly avoiding me. If anything, he seemed to be around more often than usual, lingering in the kitchen while I cooked, offering to help with chores he'd normally ignore. It was like he was watching me, and the thought made my skin crawl, but also stirred a strange, forbidden thrill. That evening, as I folded laundry, Alex sat down on the couch next to me. He didn't say anything at first, just watched the TV playing softly in the background. He was so close, his presence a constant reminder of what had happened and the possibilities it had opened up. Need help? He asked after a while. I glanced at him, surprised. Since when do you volunteer for laundry duty? I teased, trying to keep the mood light, trying to push the tension away. He shrugged. Just thought I'd keep you company, he said, smiling faintly. I handed him a towel to fold. We worked in silence for a few minutes, the rhythm of the task oddly soothing. But then I felt his gaze on me, lingering a second too long. His eyes, they were always on me, watching, studying. It was getting harder and harder to ignore. Is everything okay? I asked, breaking the silence. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I was trying so hard not to show it. Yeah, Alex said quickly, looking away, but his ears turned red. A telltale sign that something was on his mind. He was trying to hide it, but he couldn't. Just like me. Alex, if there's something you need to talk about, you can tell me, I said gently. I wanted him to say it, to admit it, but I also knew I shouldn't want that. He hesitated, his hands fumbling with the towel. It's nothing, I've been thinking about stuff. Forget it. His eyes searched mine, as if he were testing me, waiting to see if I'd say it first. I tilted my head, studying him. There was a vulnerability in his expression that made my heart ache. I saw a longing in his eyes, something that mirrored my own, and it was terrifying. I reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. My hand was trembling, but I didn't pull it away. You can talk to me, honey, I said softly, no matter what it is. I shouldn't have. It was like giving him permission, a permission I didn't intend to give. Alex looked at me, his eyes searching mine as if trying to find the right words. But then he shook his head and stood up abruptly. Never mind, he muttered. I'm going to head to bed. His sudden departure was both a relief and a disappointment, and the tension lingered like a constant gnawing ache. He was gone, but the feeling of his eyes on me still lingered. I could feel his presence, an invisible tension that made my skin crawl, but also, strangely, made my heart race. I picked up my book, trying to distract myself from the thoughts swirling in my mind, but it wasn't working. He had broken the ice, and now I was afraid of what would come next. Later that evening, I was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, flipping through channels on the TV. Alex came downstairs and plopped onto the couch beside me. He was getting bolder. I had to give him that. Plans tonight? I asked, trying to sound casual. Nah, he replied. Everyone's busy. He was lying, and we both knew it. I raised an eyebrow. It wasn't like Alex to skip a chance to hang out with his friends, especially on a weekend. It was like he was trying to be near me. It was getting so hard to act like it wasn't working. Well, it's been a while since we've hung out together, I said. Want to watch a movie? Sure, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. He was too good at pretending. It was getting hard to tell what was real and what was a performance. We settled on an action movie Alex had been talking about for weeks. As the film played, I felt the tension between us begin to ease. We laughed at the cheesy one-liners, cringed at the over-the-top explosions, and exchanged knowing looks during the predictable plot twists. It felt almost normal, and that made me feel incredibly guilty. But as the credits rolled, I noticed Alex looking at me again, the same way he had during our laundry folding session earlier. That stare. It was like fire, and I was getting burned by it. What's on your mind? I asked, breaking the silence. I shouldn't have asked, but I couldn't help myself. Nothing, he said quickly, but his face gave him away. He was lying, and we both knew it. Alex? I pressed, setting my glass on the coffee table. You've been acting different lately. Is something bothering you? My heart was pounding. I was playing with fire, and it was thrilling. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. It's just, I don't know how to say it without it sounding weird. He was about to say it to admit what we were both thinking, and I was desperate to hear him. My stomach tightened. You can say anything to me, I assured him. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's about that night, he admitted finally. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. What about it? The air felt charged, and I was bracing myself for what was coming. It's not like I'm mad or anything, he said quickly. but I can't stop thinking about it. About you. The words were out. He had said it, and everything changed. His words hung in the air, heavy and electric. My heart raced, a mix of panic and confusion flooding my senses. It was happening. The line was being crossed, and deep down, I knew I wanted it. Alex, I began, searching for the right words. But what were the right words? There was no way out of this, not anymore. I know it's wrong, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But it's like ever since then I see you differently. He felt it too. The forbidden desire was like a magnet, pulling us closer and closer. I stared at him, my mind spinning. He knew, and that made everything even more dangerous. I opened my mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. I shouldn't have said anything, Alex muttered, standing abruptly. Forget I said that. He was running away, but it was too late. It was all out in the open, and now what were we supposed to do? Alex, wait. I wanted to stop him, but I didn't, and that made me wonder. But he was already heading upstairs, leaving me sitting on the couch, my thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. He said he'd forget, but I knew, we both knew, that this was just the beginning. He was gone, but the feeling of his eyes on me still lingered. I could feel his presence, an invisible tension that made my skin crawl, but also, strangely, made my heart race. I picked up my book, trying to distract myself from the thoughts swirling in my mind, but it wasn't working. He had broken the ice, and now I was afraid of what would come next. That night, sleep was impossible. I tossed and turned, his words echoing in my mind, tempting me to give in to the desires I had been trying to suppress. The feeling was a mix of discomfort and shame, but beneath it was a powerful pull, a longing for the forbidden. By morning, I decided it was time to confront him, to put an end to this, or at least try to regain some kind of control. I found him in the backyard, shooting hoops by himself. His movements were tense, his frustration palpable, almost a mirror to my own internal turmoil. Can we talk? I asked, leaning against the porch railing. He looked at me, his expression guarded but nodded. I stepped closer, taking a deep breath. What you said last night, I need you to know that it's okay to feel confused sometimes, but this, whatever you're feeling, it's not right. I needed to say it, to put it out there, to try and create some kind of barrier. No, Alex said, bouncing the ball against the pavement. I didn't mean to make things weird. He was lying, I could tell, but a part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this could just disappear. You didn't, I lied, my voice soft. But we need to move past this. You're my son, Alex. That's the most important thing. Nothing can change that. I was trying to convince myself as much as him, but the truth was, everything had already changed. He nodded, his shoulders slumping slightly. I get it, he said. He didn't get it, and we both knew it. He was just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. I wanted to believe him, but the look in his eyes told me that this wasn't over. It was like he was surrendering, but also holding back, waiting for me to give him another sign, waiting for me to change my mind. He walked past me, his shoulder brushing mine, the contact sending a jolt of electricity through me. I went back inside the house, feeling a subtle relief, thinking maybe it's over now. But I was so wrong. What happened next was something I could never have imagined. I needed to get away from him, to put some space between us. But the heat that had awakened deep inside me was now impossible to deny. I was heading toward my bedroom when a knock on my door startled me. My heart leaped into my throat. I knew it was him, and I knew deep down that I was ready. Come in, I called, my voice hesitant. My hands were shaking and I was trying to keep myself under control, but it was getting too difficult. Alex stepped inside, his expression unreadable. He hesitated, hovering near the doorway. He looked like a ghost, or a forbidden temptation I wasn't strong enough to resist. What's up? I asked, trying to sound casual, as if we were just two regular people having a normal conversation. It was a lie we were both telling ourselves. I just wanted to check on you, he said, his voice soft. I'm fine. I replied, forcing a smile. I wasn't fine. I was drowning, desperate and yearning for something. I knew I shouldn't want this. Alex stepped closer, his gaze steady. You don't seem fine, he said. He knew me too well. He saw through my lies, through my attempts to keep him at a distance. I felt my pulse quicken. I've just been busy, I said, standing and moving toward the window to create some space. But I was only running away from myself, from the truth that was staring me in the face. You've been avoiding me, Alex said bluntly. He knew. He always knew. He had figured it out, and he was waiting for me to admit it. I turned to face him, my stomach churning. That's not true, I said, though the words felt hollow even to my own ears. I sounded pathetic. It is, Alex insisted, his voice tinged with frustration. Ever since we talked, you've been acting like I don't exist. He was pulling me closer, and I couldn't stop it. Alex, that's not fair, I said, my voice rising slightly. I'm trying to do what's best for both of us. I wanted to believe that, but I didn't. All I wanted was to give in, to surrender to the temptation sitting right in front of me. And ignoring me is what's best? His words were sharp, cutting through my defenses, tearing them to shreds. They hit me like a punch to the gut. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to give us both some space to move past this. It was a lie. I wasn't trying to move past it. I was just afraid to confront it, afraid to admit how I really felt. But I don't want to move past it, Alex said, his voice breaking. He was admitting it finally, and now there was no way back. The raw emotion in his tone made my breath catch. I stared at him, my mind racing, my heart pounding in my chest. In that moment, I knew everything was about to change. Alex, this isn't something we can explore, I said carefully, but my voice was trembling, and I knew the fight was already lost. Why not? He asked, stepping closer. We're both adults. We both feel it. He was so close, and I could almost feel the heat radiating off his body, pulling me in. I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. It's not about feelings. It's about what's right. But what was right anymore? I was losing my grip on reality, lost in a sea of forbidden desires. Alex reached out, his hand brushing my arm. Sometimes what's right isn't what feels right, he said softly. His touch sent a jolt of electricity through me, and I knew right then and there that I was about to cross a line I never thought I would. I pulled away, my heart pounding. This conversation is over, I said firmly, moving toward the door. But even as I tried to leave, a part of me was waiting, wanting him to stop me. Alex blocked my path, his eyes pleading. Please, Mom, just listen to me. Alex, stop, I said, my voice trembling. My resistance was crumbling, and I was surrendering to his pull, to my own forbidden desires. I can't, he said, his voice breaking. I can't stop thinking about you. He was admitting it all, and the desire was undeniable. What would happen now? I felt tears prick my eyes. You don't mean that, I whispered. It was like looking in a mirror, seeing my own forbidden desires reflected back at me. I do, he insisted, and I think you do too. He saw it in me. He always had. And it was terrifying but also thrilling. The weight of his words hung in the air, suffocating and undeniable. I felt my resolve crumbling under the intensity of his gaze. My body was betraying me, yearning for his touch, for the forbidden pleasure I knew was waiting if I just gave in. But before I could respond, a loud knock at the front door shattered the moment. It was like a lifeline, a chance to escape the madness unfolding. Both of us froze, our hearts racing. I was relieved, but also disappointed. The temptation was still there, lurking beneath the surface. I'll get it, I said quickly, slipping past Alex and rushing downstairs. I needed to get away, to put some space between us, but I also knew it was only a matter of time before we'd be in the same position again. I opened the door to find my neighbor Carol standing on the porch with a warm smile. Hi, Lauren, Just wanted to drop off those baking pans I borrowed, Carol said, holding up a stack of pans. I forced a smile, grateful for the interruption. Thanks, Carol. That's so thoughtful of you. I wanted to be anywhere else, and the normality felt so distant now. We exchanged pleasantries, but my mind was elsewhere. When I finally closed the door and turned around, Alex was standing at the top of the stairs, watching me. His eyes were dark, intense, burning into me, through me, right to the core of my desires. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew things couldn't go on like this. It was inevitable. We were both headed down a path of no return, and nothing was going to stop it. Then the unthinkable happened. Later that day, I was getting ready to have dinner when he came into the kitchen. He stood there silently for a moment, his eyes fixed on me. It was like he was testing me, pushing my boundaries, and a part of me, a dark, forbidden part, was enjoying the challenge. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It was as if I was already surrendering. "I'm not hungry," he replied, stepping closer to me. His gaze was intense, and my heart was pounding in my chest. "Alex?" I said, but he cut me off. "I can't," he said, his voice thick with emotion, reaching for my hand. His touch sent a jolt through me, and it was like my resistance was crumbling, like all those boundaries I was trying to keep between us were fading away. My hand shook in his, and everything I had been resisting began to fall apart. It was as if his touch had unlocked something deep inside me, a forbidden longing that had been building for weeks, now finally reaching its breaking point. I wanted to pull away, but my body betrayed me, craving his touch, yearning for the forbidden pleasure that awaited if I just gave in. He stepped closer, closing the gap between us, his eyes searching mine. "You feel it too," he whispered. I held my breath, wanting to deny it, but his gaze held me captive, and I couldn't lie. I was trapped in the web of my own desires, drawn to the forbidden thrill just beyond the edge. His eyes dropped to my lips, then rose to meet mine again. He cupped my face in his hands, his touch both gentle and possessive. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, daring me, challenging me. Part of me desperately wanted to say no, but another part, a darker part, wanted to finally give in. His breath was warm against my skin, and I was drowning, lost in a sea of my own forbidden desires. His lips brushed mine, a soft, tentative touch that sent shivers through me. My hands found their way to his hair, pulling him closer. The kiss was a spark, igniting a fire deep within me, a fire I had tried so hard to suppress. He started the kiss, and then I kissed back, no longer fighting it, but embracing it instead. The kiss deepened, and I melted against him, surrendering to the touch, to the desire, to the forbidden. It was as if all the barriers I had fought for so long crumbled in that moment, and there was no turning back. The line had been crossed. We were now in a different world, and everything was about to change. His lips were on mine, and I was kissing him back, all my resistance gone, all boundaries blurred. The kiss grew deeper, and I melted against him, giving in to the touch, to the desire, to the forbidden. It was as if all the walls I had built had completely collapsed, and in that moment, there was no going back. The line had been crossed. We were now in a different world, and everything was about to change. I pulled away abruptly, my breathing ragged, my heart pounding. What had I done? What had we done? Guilt weighed heavily in my stomach, but it was strangely mixed with an excitement that left me almost euphoric. "We can't do this," I managed to say, my voice trembling. Alex sat back, his expression a mix of hurt and frustration. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't help it." His eyes were dark, intense, and they made my heart ache with something I couldn't quite name. I covered my face with my hands, trying to regain my composure. "We need to stop this now, Alex, before it goes any further." I wanted to believe those words, but deep down, I knew it was a lie. We had opened a door, and there was no going back. He nodded, though the tension in his jaw betrayed his true feelings. "I understand," he said, standing up. "I'll go." but his eyes were still burning into me, and I knew he wasn't really leaving. Not in the way that mattered. He turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone in the silence. I tried to convince myself that it would be okay, that we would somehow find a way to move past this, but a part of me, a dark, forbidden part, was hoping for something else. The house was eerily quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched cup of coffee. The events of the night before played on a loop in my mind, a mix of passion and regret that I couldn't untangle. I was drowning in it, lost in a sea of forbidden emotions. The guilt was still there, but it was overshadowed by something else. Something I couldn't quite define. I wanted to go to my room, to escape from this house, from this tension, and from all the confusing thoughts spiraling in my mind, but I couldn't move. My mind was hazy, and my body ached, remembering his touch, his kiss, and the thrill of giving in to the forbidden desire. I spent the rest of the evening like that, lost in a trance, replaying every moment, every touch, trying to understand what I had just done. What did it mean? What would happen now? And why had I allowed it to happen? I couldn't deny it anymore. I wanted him, and that was that. I was addicted to the thrill, to the danger, to the forbidden, and now there was no turning back. I had crossed a line I never thought I would approach, and the consequences were about to unfold. The best or worst part was yet to come. Later that night, I lay awake in bed, my mind racing, trying to make sense of it all. The guilt was there, a constant ache in the pit of my stomach, but it was intertwined with something else. Something forbidden, something exciting. I knew deep down that it wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not ever. The forbidden had awoken, and there was no going back. It was the only feeling I could grasp, and with that, I closed my eyes, embracing what had happened and anticipating what was to come. I closed my eyes, embracing the forbidden desire that had awakened within me. But the silence around me was too loud, too deafening. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. I tried to sleep, but my body was tingling and my mind was racing, replaying the kiss, the touch, the way he had made me feel. That was when I finally realized that sleep was the last thing I wanted. I got up and went to the window, looking out at the dark night. The world was silent, but my head was buzzing with forbidden thoughts, with the desires I had tried to deny for so long. I knew that what had happened earlier wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was something more, something that had changed everything. I could still feel him. His presence, his touch, the way he had looked at me. It all burned into my mind. I tried to think of other things, to focus on work or plan for the next day, but my thoughts always drifted back to him, to the forbidden pleasure, to the possibility of it all happening again. I went downstairs. The house was silent, and I could hear the soft ticking of the clock in the living room. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what we would do next, waiting for us to break the rules again. Something about the anticipation made my heart flutter, and a strange thrill pulsed through me. I stood there in the darkness, replaying the moments I had tried so hard to ignore, embracing the darkness within me, finally and fully, ready to accept whatever might come. I went to the kitchen to prepare a drink, but as I was getting water from the fridge, the hairs on my neck rose. I knew I wasn't alone. I turned around and saw Alex standing in the doorway, his eyes dark and intense, a mixture of longing and twisted desire mirroring my own. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. We both knew. He moved slowly toward me, and I didn't move. I wanted to run, to tell him to stop, to try and find what was left of my old life. But a part of me, the forbidden part, was urging me to just embrace it, to give in to this twisted longing and see where it would lead. He reached out and took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine, the contact sending a shiver down my spine. He led me toward the living room, and I followed, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. I knew this was wrong, so incredibly wrong, but at the same time it felt so right, and the forbidden thrill was too much to deny. We sat on the couch together, our bodies close but not touching, and the silence between us was heavy, charged with unspoken desires, with a tension that was both terrifying and exhilarating. I knew with a chilling certainty that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The forbidden had awakened, and there was no turning back. This was our new reality, and I found myself strangely drawn to this twisted bond we had created, to this dangerous path we were on, and to the thrill of the unknown that lay ahead. He reached out and traced the curve of my neck, his touch sending a shiver through me. He leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear, his voice a low, husky murmur. "You know you want this," he whispered, the words sending a jolt of electricity through me. I did. I wanted him, and there was no point in denying it anymore. My body responded immediately, a familiar tension building, a slow, burning ache. He kissed me then, a deep, possessive kiss that sent a wave of heat through me. My hands moved to his body, exploring his skin, pulling him closer, wanting more, needing more. The world outside the living room faded away, replaced by the heat of his body, the taste of his lips, the intoxicating scent of his skin. We moved from the couch to the floor, our bodies tangled together, our kisses growing more passionate, more desperate. It was as if we were both drowning in a sea of forbidden desires, pulled under by the force of the taboo. I was lost in a whirlwind of forbidden sensations, a dangerous dance on the edge of the unthinkable. His hands roamed over my body, exploring, igniting a fire I thought long extinguished. His fingers tested the edges of my resolve, breaking down my defenses with every touch. I responded, my own hands tracing his body, feeling the contours of his muscles, the heat of his skin. The world faded around us as we got lost in our forbidden desires. Then I gave in, lost in the moment, and oh my God, I could barely remember. That was sudden, I mumbled. But that was it. Everything changed. The feelings were overwhelming, my mind was spinning, and I knew with a chilling certainty that we had crossed a line. We were no longer ourselves, and there was no way back. The world felt too small yet infinite. I was both terrified and exhilarated. It was wrong, so incredibly wrong, and yet, in that moment, it felt right. It felt like coming home. Afterwards, we lay there tangled in each other's arms, the silence broken only by the sound of our ragged breaths. I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through my veins. What had we done? We had crossed a line and there was no way back. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched cup of coffee. The events of the night before played on a loop in my mind, a mix of passion and regret that I couldn't untangle. I was drowning in it, lost in a sea of forbidden emotions. The guilt was still there, but it was overshadowed by a sense of something else. Something I couldn't quite define. Alex appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Morning," he said, his voice cautious. His eyes were searching mine, waiting for my reaction, and I was terrified of what would come next. "Morning," I replied, not meeting his eyes. I didn't dare look at him, afraid of what I would see, what I would feel. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our actions pressing down on us. Finally, Alex spoke. "We need to figure out where we go from here." He was right. We had crossed the line and there was no going back. I nodded, my throat tight. "This can't happen again," I said, my voice firm. "It was a mistake." I was lying again, and I knew he knew it. He looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. "Was it?" he asked, challenging me, daring me to admit the truth, to embrace the forbidden. "Yes," I said, though the word felt like a lie. "We need to move on, to forget about it." I was lying, and I hated myself for it, but it was the only thing I could say, the only way to keep us both from completely spiraling into madness. Alex didn't respond, but the look in his eyes told me that forgetting was the last thing on his mind. He was waiting. He was always waiting, and I knew that this was far from over. I had taken the forbidden bite, and I was addicted. And what would be the price? As he turned and walked away, I felt a pang of sorrow and guilt that I knew would haunt me for the rest of my life, but also a dark spark of something else, something that was both terrifying and thrilling. And it was that feeling that I was destined to pursue. After all, What do you do when you take the forbidden bite and find yourself addicted? I just don't know anymore. Was I wrong for this, or was it inevitable? What would you have done?